Well, welcome, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to hang out for a few minutes with me and my friend Leslie Zurita. Well, last Sunday was an amazing day at Lifespring. I mean, what did you think?
What did I think? Well, I thought, wow, just wow.
Yeah, wow.
I mean, reflecting back on the day and, being able to watch people light their candles and write on their cards and put those cards up on the wall, it was obvious that people took seriously what we were asking them to do, and kind of what we wanted to do as a church. And for me, at least, it was kind of emotional and it was really kind of sacred.
Yeah, it was definitely sacred. I mean, I think people did take it seriously, and I think they got it. It was a big milestone for us as a church. And I'll tell you that going into last Sunday, I had this feeling like, I wondered, are people going to get it? Are they going to, not because people aren't smart,
right, but
because I thought, have I explained this well enough? Have I painted this picture of why this is such a big deal given kind of what's going on in our culture and where the church is? Because, last Sunday we came together and we agreed and we committed as a church, as a church family, that we are going to be centered in the heart of God revealed in Jesus, the teachings of Jesus himself, and the ways of heart and relationship that Jesus models. And that means we're not going to be centered in a bunch of other things that people are chasing. And of course, we don't have time to talk about all that now, but if people want to know what we mean by that we're not going to be centered in a bunch of other things, like when I talked about what's not on the pedestal, right? They can go watch the talk and the service from last week. But one of the most beautiful things that happened that I didn't hear about till later, because people were putting it in the Facebook comments, people who couldn't be there Sunday, who were homesick or they were traveling or whatever, there were people putting on the Facebook, and we didn't tell people in advance what we were doing with the candles. People were scrambling around their houses, grabbing a candle and lighting it and saying, I'm in solidarity with this. This is where I want my church to be focused. And when I heard that, I was like, oh my God, I just thought it was beautiful. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing was absolutely amazing and beautiful. Honestly, it was unlike anything that I've ever experienced at any church.
Yeah,
and
without a doubt.
Yeah, and for me, it was a really tangible act that we all participated in together, both in person and online, saying that we're going to go do this together.
Yeah.
So now that we've done that, what comes next? We need to paint a picture as to what are we going to do now? Yeah,
I think you do this thing and then it's sort of like, okay, what now? Now what do we do? Now that we've sort of committed to this, and one simple way is just to chat for a minute, you and I, about where people said they wanted us to go when they filled out all those sheets on Sunday about what they dream of, when they think about Lifespring's future. And some of it was what you'd expect. People said, they wanted to grow in their spiritual journeys and they wanted to be more connected in friendships with others at Lifespring, things like that. But there were a couple of things that maybe were expressed more than we expected. What were those?
Well, one of the main things that a lot of the sheets said is that this needs to be a church where everyone is welcome. Everyone is welcome. So to me, that kind of says something about where we are as a church, kind of where our thinking is. But also one of the other things that a lot of the cards said was that people think we need to do more in terms of outreach, reaching people and kind of helping them to find Christ or helping them to find community, but also things like feeding the poor or caring for those in maybe a more marginalized group, if, as you will. But basically Lifespring people saying we have to be concerned about and love people both inside and outside the walls of our church.
Yeah. And people can see that for themselves, because all those sheets, we left all those sheets hanging up on the walls, and at least for the next couple of weeks, they'll be up there. And if someone didn't get a chance to do one of those, they still can and stick it up on the wall. They'll be there on Sunday. If they come Sunday, they can fill it out. They can, and so our eldership team and our strategic team, which you lead, will be looking through those and taking into account what people are expressing, because I think Lifespringers have a really solid vision in their own hearts for maybe some people value one aspect more than others, but I think when you put it together, I think Lifespringers see the picture of what a Jesus-centered church looks like and what kinds of things it would do, what kind of things we would invest ourselves in and give ourselves to. So, and we'll be talking about all that as we keep distilling the vision of where we're going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in the course of all of this, we've talked about what we're going to do over kind of the next 3 weeks. And we've discussed that we need to kind of look at what our vision is for people being connected in community and in friendship, what our mission as a church is going to be, participating in the things that we're being called to do, but also our financial giving in the whole equation and how that kind of all fits together with the other things.
Yeah. And, as we come into as we kind of roll into Holy Week and Easter here in the next 2-3 weeks, we need to be thinking about where we are going as a church community. What we said this past Sunday, was we said, this is who we want to be as a church. Mm-hmm. Now what we want to talk about is, so what does that look like when we actually step onto that road and start to walk? Where do we go as a church? And so what I hope we can say on Easter, and we're going to ask people sort of for, I guess you'd say, commitment part 2. Mm-hmm. What I hope we can say on Easter is we are, that each person can say, I'm in for not just being a spectator, mm-hmm. but a participant. We've said who we want to be. Now let's go walk it out together. Let's figure out what that looks like. We want to talk about these 3 things. And originally, we thought we would talk about them one each week. Like we would talk about community and the mission and giving, those 3 things in that order. But part of our giving conversation is also going to include a special offering on Easter, which is only less than 3 weeks away at this point. Less than 3 weeks away.
So, as you and I had kind of talked about it, we said, okay, let's plan out how this next few weeks looks. One thing that we came back to is, well, if we're going to ask for an offering, we really want people to have time to think about it and to pray about it. We don't want to just, be unfair or illogical and say, hey, we're going to do an offering next week. Be ready for it, So in the course of that planning, it kind of made the most sense to talk about the giving piece now, and then over the next couple weeks have some good conversation about, how are we connected in friendship and what is the mission that God is calling us to.
Yeah, and you and I have talked about this a lot, but can you just talk about why we're going to do a big offering on Easter?
Yeah, I absolutely can. So, I'm sure that people remember that on February 27th, we shared really openly about our finances right now. And to be clear, we're really careful with our money and we kind of keep the budget pretty tight, but we're coming out of the pandemic and our church is a little bit smaller and our monthly giving is less than what our expenses are. So, going through that budget process and looking at what our current budget is, which goes through June, we have a shortfall of $39,000.
Okay.
And we need to close that gap, that shortfall this spring, and we need giving to kind of come up overall. So I'm going to be perfectly honest and kind of blunt, which is not something I like to do, but honestly, if we don't accomplish those 2 things, closing that gap, that shortfall, and bringing giving up overall, a year from now there won't be a Lifespring Church.
Yeah. And I think everyone would agree at this point, as we look at what God is doing in our midst, which is astounding. I think everyone would agree that's a really bad idea for there not to be a Lifespring a year from now.
Right. It's not only a bad idea, but it's a horrible shame because God's called our church to something big, to something that's unique and something beautiful. But we have to close that gap, that shortfall, in one big pass on Easter morning. It's not the long-term solution, but it absolutely needs to happen.
Yeah, and I said this before, I said it on that morning to our people at Lifespring on February 27th, and I want to say it again, that the offering itself is kind of like the stopgap measure. You said $39,000. So we have a $39,000 gap in this 6-month period that we have to overcome, right? And so then we could say, okay, that 6 months is good. Then in the midterm, kind of, beyond that, maybe let's just say like the rest of this year, maybe even into the beginning of next year, if we all give a little more, we'll probably be okay. So that's kind of the stopgap, the midterm. The long-term solution is really for us to grow as a church community. Now, that's not why we want to grow, because we need more offerings, but it's just the way it works. It's just the way it works, that as Lifespring grows, and it is going to grow, then what's going to happen is there will be more people. And when there's more people, there's more giving. And then that question of sort of budget and are the resources there, that's going to kind of end up resolving itself. And I also think it's important that we remember the other big thing that we are accomplishing. Right now, we have this big mortgage payment. That's a big part of why it's a stretch and it's kind of a struggle. But in 10 years, that mortgage will be done, and Lifespring will be this debt-free community with this amazing vision from God and this amazing set of values guiding it, loving people and engaging people and helping people find transformation in Christ. And so part of what we're doing right now with saying, hey, we have to give, is we are paying it forward so that down the road, that struggle is gone.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, that's a kind of large endeavor, but I totally think that we can accomplish that.
You think we can close that gap on Easter?
I think we can close that gap.
Okay.
And I mean, I know that people have different amounts that they can give based on what their circumstances and their income are, but we really need to trust the Lord with that and make a real sacrifice and then watch it happen. I do want to say this, though. We can't just think in terms of finances. That's not what this is all about.
No.
We said just last Sunday that this is an unbelievably strong and beautiful way that we're committed to being a church centered in Jesus that thinks and loves and lives like Jesus. And this offering's a great way for people to say, kind of like you said, I am not just a spectator in this thing, I'm in.
Yeah, because, even Jesus said, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also, right? Yep. So this is one opportunity for us to say, hey, listen, I'm in, and I'm willing to make a sacrifice, and I'm willing to give, because this thing we're talking about being, right? This church centered in Jesus in these ways, we don't want to just go, oh, I guess it didn't work out, We couldn't pay the mortgage, we couldn't pay the electric bill, We want to say, yeah, we're actually going to do this. Because when I think about Lifespring in the future, I'm not thinking about, oh, we got to pay these bills. Oh, I hope there's enough money. I'm looking out, 6 months, a year, 5 years, and I'm thinking about the impact in people's hearts and lives.
Right.
That's the thing. And so we're asking all of you to think about and pray about what kind of sacrifice you could give on Easter morning so we can close that gap. And by the way, I am really excited about Easter at Lifespring this year. It's going to be great. We're going to have an awesome service. We're going to have fun stuff for the kids. There's going to be some kids making their first communion. We're going to have an Easter egg hunt for the kids right after the service. I think it's really going to be great. I think it's going to be a great morning. I'm just... the last couple Easters have been weird.
Yeah.
Welcome to pandemic Easter, right? But we're going to have an amazing, wonderful Easter. And of course, Linda and I will be praying about and thinking and talking about what we can give extra above and beyond our normal giving. And I know you and Brian will, and all our leaders will. And we're inviting everyone else to do the same, to say, we can do this. Let's just trust God a little bit and give according to our means and be generous and make a sacrifice. And, and we can see it happen.
We absolutely can. And, to give you a glimpse into how this process usually works for Brian and I, whenever we've done a big offering, we've usually talked about it in the car, not talking specifics, just talking, okay, there's going to be an offering. We need to start kind of thinking about that. And we go home and this is what we do. He goes off in one direction and he talks to the Lord and he listens to the Lord and he prays and he thinks, and I go in the other direction and I do the same thing. And then we come together like a day or two before the actual offering, and faithfully, God has done this every single time. He has put on both of our hearts the same amount.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I just want to encourage people to kind of honor that process and do what it is that they need to do to get quiet with God to do that. And while people begin to do that, they've got 2.5 weeks to do that. Now I want to completely change course and say, what are we going to talk about then next week?
Right, because we're going to do a video each week, again, like we have been for the last few weeks. And we talked, as we said, we talked about this topic first because we want you to have time to think. We want everybody to have time to think and to pray about this because, there's an old saying that says God has all the money he needs. It's in the pockets of his people, right? So we're going to give. We're going to see it happen. There's no way we're checking out on Lifespring. We're letting this thing, not at this, oh my gosh, at this point with the things God is doing and where he's taking us, there's no way. So that's why we talked about this topic first. Next week, what we're going to talk about is this whole idea of connection in the community of Jesus. The simple everyday word for that is, just friendships, and especially friendships where we're sharing this journey in Christ. And I'm excited about that. I mean, how people get connected to each other in friendships in a church, it happens in a lot of different ways. Some informal and some formal, like when there's a group and people come to that group and they start to get to know other people. And I'm excited because we have a little team of people who have been working through a fresh vision for creating groups and different kind of venues of connection around Lifespring. And I think the things that we're talking about are actually going to make it easier to create new groups and new places for people to connect so that people can find the friendships that they long for with other people. And so I think that's going to be great. We're going to talk about that next week.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. And I know maybe just a little bit about where that process is going. So I'm excited to hear more, but I'm also excited for you to share more with everybody else, because that's pretty much what we all want, right? We want to have people know that they belong. We want people to feel the joy of friendship, and we want people to have other people that they can grow with. It's all of those things.
Yeah. I mean, if you get connected to other people, you say, man, I feel like I belong here. This is my people, Right. And if you don't, then eventually you kind of feel like, well, I like this church, but I don't know if these are my people, Right. So anyway, and while we get some new groups going, because we're going to be working on that now that we're, coming out of hope people give us grace that during the pandemic, it's been hard to help people connect. We've done little things here and there. And like Taco Tuesday, which you did here and there. This last one was a crazy, wild success.
It was a big,
it was awesome.
Bit of a big success.
Like 40 women or something.
Something like that. And just, I've been now challenged to do both male and female Taco Tuesday, and I'm shooting for May.
Okay, so. All right, awesome. And while we get some new groups going and some old groups revived at Lifespring, this summer, Linda and I are going to create our own place for anyone who wants to connect more to come and do that, which I'm excited about. And I'll talk more about that next week when we sit down and do this again. Anyway, I just wanted to say thanks for doing these videos with me.
Sure.
You're getting pretty good at it, I think. And you guys might be wondering, well, why is Leslie the one doing all these videos with Pastor Fran? And I'll tell you why it is. Well, first of all, we are good friends, but it's also because she's willing to do it. Not everybody is willing to sit with Pastor Fran in front of a camera and do this kind of thing. You have to get used to talking at a camera and a microphone and all this stuff. But I'm really appreciative that you're willing to do that, because I think these things are so much more interesting to share in a conversation than they are just me, talking.
Yeah, no, my pleasure.
Camera.
Just so everybody knows, like, this is not my comfort area. I guess God has kind of challenged me in some ways, because talking in front of church, talking on video.
Yeah.
Really, I'm a under the radar kind of person.
Yeah.
So,
well, we've got you way up on the radar.
You got me on the radar.
So,
yeah.
Anyway, okay. And hey, thanks to all of you. Thanks everybody for spending this little bit of time with us. Love you guys tons, and can't wait to see you on Sunday.